Just getting started here. Okay, so good afternoon and welcome to Political Liaison of June the 19th. This is a rescheduled meeting. We had to reschedule from last week. So this morning you would have seen we've hosted our general finance and now we are hosting our political liaison. So I'm going to first begin by identifying any media that's on the line. And again, FYI to all our presenters, this is a live streamed meeting. I'm not seeing any of the media online, so I'll go to next the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Audrey, seconded by Nathan. Nathan. Did you have additional new business item?
Yeah, I have just an update under item number 8 on the AFN health legislation. We sent over the written report this morning, so it should be in everyone's box. And also, Chief, if we're not doing this already, I'll add it to the agenda, but are we doing a statement on the Métis today?
Yes.
Okay, so I won't add it to the agenda if you guys are already doing that.
Yeah, in fact, I want to read it out as before we do the live streaming because as we know, we're all in Ottawa this morning. Helen.
Yeah, just a brief report under the council. Brief report under the council report, and Teresa said they couldn't hardly hear me. Am I not talking loud enough? Am I talking loud? She said that she couldn't hardly hear me out there.
Yeah, I think you're good now. We're getting thumbs up. So as long as we're using our mics, we should be okay with audio. Audrey.
I declare a conflict of interest for the delegation, Jace.
Okay. No problem. We'll have Brooke add you to the room. Councillor Audrey is declaring conflict, adding also Helen's new business. So then I will look for mover and seconder to adopt the political liaison agenda of June 19th with those additional items. Moved by Greg, seconded by Sherry Lynn. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, Council, we do have, I believe, 3 delegations on this meeting. Our first delegation, who I see on the line, is Jace Martin in relation to Six Nations Community Youth Outreach. So with that being said, I want to welcome you, Scanout Sego. Good afternoon, Jace. Nice to see you as our lead.
Thank you for getting us on the agenda. We appreciate you guys.
Yes, no problem. I'll with that being said, Jace, I'll pass the floor over to yourself.
Okay. So yeah, we are working on well, we used to be a part of the former Salvation Army property back there. Right? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when 35, maybe 38 years ago, I worked for Fran and John Miller, the captains, Fran and John Miller, Salvation Army. I was a manager of the store. Now I ultimately became part of their church, managing things in the church. And they shared with me back then that can't remember his name, but Murray Dicker's brother donated that land for church use. So I just wanted to have that on record at Six Nations Council. And later, my husband said that Murray confirmed it with him, saying, "Yeah, my brother donated that for church use." So we want to take advantage of that and use it for that. I think that's all I needed to say.
Right. Well, with that in mind, we are wanting to plan a nightly musical event for the community to welcome the community to that property, like by setting up a nice tent outside and having music nightly from July 2nd to the 9th at 7 p.m. every night, and with like light refreshments and probably, I'm not sure if we're going to have sandwiches or anything like that, but just like to welcome the community and have like music from different musicians come in every night for probably Kenny and Sonia Salt agreed to come. Morgan Jacobs Church. So we're gonna have like different nightly performers come and just like kind of celebrate and be together as a community for the week. So, and we want it to be like the first, hopefully, of many events in the future at that property. So yeah, we were just hoping to seek permission to use that property to kind of have this event and bring the community together and just play some music.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Nyawa, for that overview. I'm gonna open up the floor for any questions. I think at this point in time, obviously post-COVID, it's always nice to get together as a community as much as we can. So I do
Yes.
appreciate the work that you're doing in that nature. I see Sherry Lynn has her hand raised. You just gotta hit your mic, Sherry Lynn.
I have no problem passing this. I guess my only concern is just the parking, and are the police gonna be aware of it? Because that's just around my corner. So I'm just wondering where they're all gonna park and stuff like that. Other than that, I'll move it.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds great. That's a great thing. We're gonna definitely have people there to help with parking and to manage parking and the flow of traffic. We don't really feel like it's gonna be too hectic as far as the first event and everything like that. And we're definitely gonna let the police know that we're having the event and the nights that we have them. And then from the first event, even the first evening, we'll understand more of the how many people are coming and traffic issues, and we can deal with them accordingly.
Okay, perfect. Now for that, so I do have a mover on the floor. It's moved by Sherry Lynn to recommendation 4.1. Again, just for community that reads that the elected council approved the Six Nations Community Youth Outreach to host camp meetings to have nightly gospel music from July 2nd through till July 9th, starting at 7 p.m. through till roughly 8:30 p.m. each evening at the location of the Old Salvation Army building property. It's been moved by Sherry Lynn. Is there a
Could we make that to 9? Just so
I'll
we
second
can-
the motion.
Sure, yeah, no, and the hours are too strict, but yes, thank you for that, Melba. So there's a seconder. Is there any further questions or comments?
I do, it's Melba. Yeah, about some kind of safety precautions. Like you're gonna have youth, but you're probably gonna have families with younger children, for example. So what is happening there concerning safety, like running on the road or fighting with each other, or we do all kind of things, of course, with children. So what kind of precautions do you have in place?
Yes, exactly. Through community outreach has been around since like 2000. So we have a lot of volunteers that we work with and coordinate with. So we'll have people making sure, obviously, that no one is around the road for safety concerns, exactly like that. And if there's like any kind of like problem with like the children or anything, like we can like deal with their parents to see if there's something that can be done about that, or we just have to ask that the kids would have to, like their parents would have to like leave for that night till they calm down or something.
We
Like
could have children's.
we do have children's crafts and stuff like that, but like Faith, she runs like the children's like group too. So like there's things that we can do for that, but we anticipate it running pretty smoothly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Nyawa, for that. And I think again, Jason, I know you've already mentioned this as well, and we've been really giving heads up to really all events in community is just to inform police regardless of the magnitude of event. I think it's always nice to at least have police aware of the event in the case of any traffic issues or whatever. So
Right.
if you could do that work, that would be greatly
Yes,
appreciated.
of course.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I see Audrey. Yeah, sorry, Audrey, we're still on the same topic, Audrey. You're still a conflict that you declared. So 1 second. Is there any further question or comments? Okay, seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Well, thank you, Nyawa, so much, Jason and Arlene, for coming in front of council and seeking this permission, and do wish you all the best on your event.
Thank you so
You
much.
Come out too.
Yeah, you guys get all invited.
Definitely. I know I also been seeing some great reviews on your food trucks. I got to check out the food truck.
Oh yeah. I'm telling you, you guys gotta come.
Yeah.
Street
Right
foodies.
on.
Yeah. We'll do
Sounds good.
catering too. So if you guys have any events, we'd love to come cater for you guys sometime.
Perfect. Yes, there's always opportunities, so we'll definitely reach out.
Yep.
Motion to waive second reading moved by Sherry Lynn, seconder,
Second,
seconded
Melba.
by Melba. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, well, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.
Take care. Okay, council, we're going to continue moving along here on our agenda. The next delegation we have is Phil Montour. I know this item has been here before and in relation to this property. So I'll pass the floor over to Phil for himself to walk us through the recommendation that's on our agendas. Good afternoon, Phil.
Good afternoon. I didn't realize I was a delegation, but thank you.
Well, you're a couple things, Phil, on this agenda.
All right, cut her off there. I guess one of the issues is the frustrations that we're facing in this community with encroachments. You know, as far as our forestry, as well as development occurring and haphazard waste, and you know, you got smoke factories coming into being built into well-established, quiet residents, and people have their lifelong investment in there and raising families. As you know, we are all around each other, and all of a sudden up pops a smoke factory and all everything tied to it, and as well as other developments like in we've got in I guess it was last September the residents of Third Line down here petitioned to put a stop to that white company running the cement factory down here. And nothing occurred. So what I've been proposing and working on, and feedback from your public works, as well as your environment department, as well as Guyana say, on all the efforts they're trying to do to help promote a safe environment and add to our forestry and everything out there. What we're missing here is rules and regulations. I think we've all known that. And to get a mandate, I think, is the issue. It seems like the sitting councils of the day don't have it within them to put this on the table. So what I'm seeking is that we this council actually have a plebiscite set at the same time as the next election, so we can see that the new council coming in can at least have a mandate to start establishing rules and regulations on development and measures to protect the environment, you know, from all of the, you know, even from the dumping of soils, contaminated soils outside of our territory. We know what chaos that's been, not with just this council, but it's always been a continuous issue, as well as shingles. I know they were being dumped in the territory for the longest time. And it's very difficult for our people to do the best they can for the environment down here when there's no rules and regulations. So this would be the first step I'd see in starting to formulate our own justice system to have enforcement, so we can have a safe and healthy community. And that should be our goal, because we got to leave this place better position, in better condition than we've inherited it. That's our obligation. So what I'm recommending is that this resolution being forward, establishing a plebiscite at the next election time.
Okay, now Phil, and I think it's our earlier meeting, we just spoke on the importance of what you're bringing up in relation to building out, you know, the rules and regs, but also allowing some mechanism for enforcement, because at the end of the day, it's going to take our entire community to come together into you know, be able to respect the land and follow the rules. Because last time I checked, and I don't think this is where we get misconstrued of rumors or talks of municipality, and there's no municipality coming, but that doesn't mean we have to have a low level of standard. That means that we should be able to have high standards for our community, our neighbors, our lands. And I agree with this. I mean, I think it's something that we've discussed around the table for many years. It's a matter of actually actionizing it and putting the necessary tools in place so that we can do the work, which is to implement our own justice. And I think you've mentioned that already. And I think I see Nathan has his hand raised But we've seen this time and time, especially over the last year and a half. I mean, well, really in this term, but under the Environment Task Force and the work that has been trying, they've been doing great work. But I think they're at a point now where their hands are tied in a sense because there's no enforcement mechanism. And that's where I think it's going to also take, we went down the voluntary route, and this is on the Environmental Task Force initiative, to if there's people bringing in or having different projects or whatever it may be, that there's a voluntary process. But again, it's got to come back to, the respecting of the land and your neighbors and everything else. So I think it even takes us, taking a step further to what we have to do. I think as an entire community, we have to come together and have these set out and to be followed is going to be the next challenge. I'm going to open the floor for further questions, comments, first beginning with Nathan, over to Greg, and then Hazel and Helen. Nathan, you have the floor.
Thanks, Chief, and thanks, Phil, for bringing this forward. Chief, I'll move this, and I have a comment. So my comment is that, I think for the most part that when we look at what's happening, as Chief described in a number of different areas, we're moving as far as we can as this particular council, and as far as this particular council has really allowed us to. But for the most part, I think, in our last 5 months, we have, again, and I always speak about that opportunity, we have an opportunity to kind of close the gap, and this approach closes that in terms of getting as much done as we can as this particular council, but ensuring that the next council is set up for success. And I think that's the biggest thing for me right now is, I don't want any new councillor coming in to feel like I felt coming in, not knowing my role, not understanding the policies, not understanding where we are, where we're coming from, what our plan was. And this really sets a good kind of example from previous council to the new council to get this important work done. I think this is the crux of the issues within our community. We talk about zoning, we talk about the environment, we talk about the investments in the land use all across this territory. And really it's about putting the butter and the bread together now and doing the hard work. This is where the hard work really entails for us to do that. I really like how Darren has put the investments in place. So I think we're there on that front. But now comes the hard work, and I really appreciate the approach here, because this is where, whether it's this council or the next one, I hope I'm still involved. But this is really where we have to get it right in terms of the survival for the community in a lot of fronts. Final point is, just as an update, Phil, we're going to try and get a standard in place by way of a bylaw on dumping at a minimum through the Environmental Task Force. And I think in a lot of ways, the work that you're doing here just supports that particular piece going forward. So that's why I'm moving this, because I think we need to take that holistic approach, and we need to look at this from the high level and really start putting, I see council's role as setting these types of, quote unquote regulations that we have within the community. And I think, I don't think we can wait any longer. Mother Earth is giving signals, climate change is giving us signals, all these signals are coming down. And we can't go up against a tornado. We can't go up against flooding. We can't go up against forest fires and the air quality. So it's more working with Mother Earth now is where we have to kind of transition the pieces. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling here, but definitely support this work, and we'll move this going forward.
Hey, Nyawa, for your comments, Nathan, and really I do agree, and that's what what we're trying to pull together for the new council, as well as that orientation package, because that way it will be able to say once whoever the next is, I mean, regardless of which, time doesn't stop, right? The business has to keep going, and so we want to be able to best do as much as we can with the remaining time we have left to this term. But to your point, setting the next council up for success is the ultimate goal. So this is definitely a priority. So yeah, for your comments for that. I'm going to continue going down the speakers list. The next speaker is Greg.
Thanks, Phil, for this initiative. It's very important. But I actually, just to reinforce maybe what the community knows, but if you could give us the definition of a Carolinian forest and what would be its impact if it was lost.
Well, you know, right now, the Carolinian forest, it's the largest, Six Nations, believe it or not, is holding, has been deemed the caretaker of Canada's largest Carolinian forest, and it's all the original, basically, forest through this area. And we've got, through Guyana, say, they do their unique seed collections. And really what's going on, Nathan just touched on it, with forest fires, with everything else that's happening around us environmentally. You know, they've got a task ahead of them to try and keep an advancement of maintaining this Carolinian forest, and with new plantings that are carried on. Because when somebody sells the land and some, you know, I might as well just say it, these money-hungry guys who are running a lot of these factories out there, they don't really care about the land, they just care about their pocket. And they cut down the forest and clear the land, and we're losing that, you know, and that's really our lungs as the Carolinian forest. And within the Grand River territory, there's so many unique plants and medicine plants and so on that we've had through these years, that we've got to protect these. You know, everybody says, you know, we got a lot of swamp here, true, the wetlands, but the wetlands themselves, they are lungs to the earth too. So we have this obligation. And the inventory we've done since the 80s on the tree inventory down here, it's unique. It's one of its kind in Canada. And we're jeopardizing that. You know, I understand, you know, our population's growing. We got to have houses, you know, that's fine. But I don't think we got to have clear cutting of lands, large acreages. And that's happening. And what's really, I find very upsetting is some of our own people are fronting for non-natives just to sit down here, and I'll just say it right out. The cement factory just up Third Line, it's destroying our roads. They've got runoff from that site going right into the Boston Creek here. They've had a fish study done, and they said, well, you know, it's going downhill fast. Well, guess why, people? There's obligations that we've got to take care of this.
Just to follow up, Chip.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with you, Phil. Yeah, and you can still build houses with trees.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't think clear cutting is necessary. But Chief, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you for that. And do apologize. And there was a motion on the floor moved by Nathan on the recommendation. Again, for community's sake, I'm just going to read that therefore be it resolved, Six Nations Grand River Elected Council prepare a companion for the Six Nations population seeking a mandate whether to implement rules and regulations for the 59th elected council to protect the environment, health, and overall well-being of the Six Nations territory and people thereon. So it's moved by Nathan and seconded by Greg. Further going down the speakers queue, and again, really important comments. And to Phil's point, that's part, I think, of the problem is that a lot of our community don't realize exactly your statement of, you know, holding the largest Carolinian forest, the uniqueness of the land itself, the trees, the species, all of those pieces. So I know, you know, even specifically to the company that you referred to on the concrete, you know, we've reached out as well and can further, because I know that was one of the priorities was to get the list of concerns and to see what the status of the concerns that have been dealt with. And that's again some follow-up that we can do from the chief's office. Anyways, I know the inaction, I guess, in the sense of the petition wasn't necessarily because of not wanting to do it. It's a matter of hands tied, and I think community responsibility at times. And so we'll definitely still follow up on those list of concerns and the status of those from that specific company. Going back to the speaker's order, Hazel.
Yes, I'm just glad to say that we were successful, Bill, with bringing this forward to council. I think there needs to be a plebiscite to to control all that seems to be just do whatever you feel like doing. Right now, we have a situation over on Third Line whereby there's a site where they're dumping where I don't even know what it's called. It's being dumped, but you can really smell the smells that are coming off in that area. And I think the controls that are put in place from this, and then it'll be a big help for the next council that comes in. And I just think it's wonderful that as of right now, we're still waiting to pass this, but I'm sure it's going to go through with no problem. Thank you.
Okay, now I thank you, Hazel, for your comments. I'm going to just continue to keep going down the list as I have two other speakers, Sherry Lynn and Audrey. So the next item, or next speaker I have is Helen. Yes. Oh, just 2 seconds, Helen. You gotta click it again.
Stay green. Stay green.
I just let it go for 1 second. It should flash and then turn red.
Doing that, what? That's great.
Go ahead, test it, Helen. No.
I don't understand green. Why don't you? That holler?
Yeah, mine did too. Sorry, just 1 second, console.
Right now. She had to shut hers off now.
Oh,
other one's red.
the other one's red, Helen.
You have the other one on now.
That one's weird.
Mine's not working yet.
Okay, we'll get
You have to shut one off.
it.
Oh. Okay. I understand your concern. But my comments to this is, when you stop and think about it, the whole reserve is a residential area. The whole reserve is residential. We don't have an area where we can have businesses. So there's no place for business other than their own properties. And that's what people are doing. They're putting their business on their own property because that's the only place they have to put a business. And unfortunately, all of the businesses that are going up are in the residential areas because the whole reserve is a residential area. That's the problem that we have. How can we fix that? What are we gonna do about that? I don't think we can fix it because our reserve's getting more populated all the time. And it's getting more residential than anything. So that's a big issue. My other issue is when we talk about business, whether it's a cigarette shop or whatever it is, they employ a lot of people. And those people put money into our economy. So whenever we talk about business, and I know we need to protect the environment, I know we need to do that, but our community isn't fit to do anything like that because, as I said, it's all residential areas. And we have a lot of business in the residential area. I mean, I can say for myself, look at my road. And unfortunately, they have no place else to do it. They have no place else to put their business. They have no place else to put their cigarette factory if that's what they want to do, other than on their own property or property they buy. And they're all in residential areas. So I don't know what the solution is. I really don't. I don't think stopping people from business is a solution because, like I said, they employ a lot of people. So I'm not really, and I know what Phil says that a lot of the businesses are probably owned by non-natives, but we have no rules against that. I know that one on 54 across from Chris Hill's store it's all non-natives running that place. But they're partner with somebody on the reserve, so that's what they're doing. But yeah, I don't have an answer. I've been sitting here for a long time. I still don't have an answer because it's been coming up so long, but I recognize we do have to do something. I just don't know what it is because we have nothing, we don't really have a choice of telling business, you gotta go put your business over here. And this is all residential. You can't put it here. Because they're putting it on the property that they own. Anyway, those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Helen, for your comments as well. And I think, you're right. It's always been an issue, and I don't think it's it's going to take some real serious creative ways of thinking to get to that solution. But I think it all has to come back to everybody playing their role. And I think one of those roles could be even within the business community is, environmental assessment, plans, impact plans. If we could look to, if there's if it's a large scale business or whatever it is, I know back from my recollection, the United Business Park area was supposed to be at one point an industrial area where, those types of businesses could have potentially been set up in that area. But I think again, it's never worked out to what I think the councils of the day had wanted it to. But I think we still have a duty to look at the standards of this community and what that means and what that looks like. So I think it's going to be a multi-pronged approach, and I think it's going to take all of our community to actually see it successful. Oh, sorry, I'm going to just acknowledge, I know I have two more speakers, Sherry Lynn's and Q next, and then over to Audrey. But just want to acknowledge Nathan's comment in the chat. It reads, this motion isn't for council to address those issues brought up, the concerns brought up by Helen. It's to mandate a process for the entire community to provide solutions. So I guess that's the key difference between the motion and what we're trying to get accomplished today. Okay, that being said, I'm going to continue going down the list. Over to you, Sherry Lynn.
Sorry.
No, you just got a kid. There you go.
I guess just for Phil and that neighborhood, I guess all I'm asking is for timelines on this resolution also. And for a timeline with the list of concerns that you mentioned that you have, Chief, for them, because I think this neighborhood's been waiting a long time and they deserve some answers and the progress of where they're all at.
Just really quickly, if I can interject and if Phil has anything further to add. So that's intertwining. So I know there's two issues here.
Yeah.
So the first issue is in relation to what Phil came to council some time ago on that, which we could do some follow-up. But this specifically on the timeline and the way I read it is to be in place prior to the new incoming council.
I understand that, but I think also they need to know where it's going to. Like what's the process? Like how far are we at before the new council? Like
Sure.
just to keep them updated that we are actually moving forward instead of staying status quo. I just want them to know that we are taking this serious and that we are moving forward and they're kept in the loop, and just to give them some answers.
Sure.
Instead of nothing.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so we could definitely Phil to Sherilyn's first comment on timelines on the addressing of the concerns. So I can work with you to get that in relation to just the conversations that I've had with the company.
Sure. No, that's fine, because we're talking about the timelines on the cement company, because I kind of I don't regret it, but setting up this petition and I get constantly acting. Okay, we're asked, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? What are you going to do about it, Phil? To me, it was all of us, and everybody's got a role, and it's been on the council's lap, and that's kind of one of the things that initiated.
It's bigger recommendation.
Yeah, the resolution, but also with the environment, because we've been doing well through the work of Guyana saying they're kind of wondering, well, okay, we replant all of this, and then 10 years time, somebody with big pockets comes along and buys it, and then it's all torn down. It's almost like, what's the point? And I certainly don't want them to feel that way, because we have this community, here's the problem. We take, you know, the Carolina forest and all the things here, we take for granted because we grew up with it. But to everybody else, it's a real jewel that, you know, they give us great kudos for taking care of. And in reality, it's something we all grew up in. Now we take it for granted. And that's the unfortunate part. So if we're going to maintain the integrity of this, we got to do things. And you know, it's not this council, it should have been done 20 years ago before the big bucks really took over. And that's where the challenge is going to be. But it can be done. And all of Helen's comments, they're valid comments. We're not to put anybody out of work. It's just to make sure when it's done respectfully of the neighbors, it's done respectfully of the environment, and it's done right.
Right.
Because we're just becoming a tax haven for non-natives. That's the problem.
Exactly. And I think that's where, you know, when the comments of, and you're saying it too, everyone, it's going to also be responsibility of those business owners.
Sure.
They have a role to play as well. Audrey, over to you.
Yes, I agree with what all of you are saying, because I feel the same way. With this process that Phil's asking us to develop has to include everything, such as the unregulated pot shops that are all over the reserve. Do we even know how many there are? Do we know how many smoke, what do you call them, factories are on the reserve? A lot of them are hidden in the bush. Trees all around them, so they don't think you can see them, but they're there. And they're bringing in all kinds of unsavory business to the reserve and shipping out, and then they've got a delivery system going there, so that has to be looked into. The use of our roads, there should be something done to all these big trucks, companies, to charge a toll or levy to help repair our roads after that lantern, whatever it was, lighting in on 4th line. The roads were covered with all kinds of mud that took a while to clean off. So those are the types of things that damage to the roads. You just fix one road and next thing you know, there's another one, another one, another one, because of the heavy use. So it has to include that as well. And I think along with the Carolinian forest that we have here, it has to be, all the trees need to be listed, even if they have pictures with them. And then we should have booklets sent out to everybody. People are building homes. You should know not to put an Austrian pine tree on your home. It's one of the weakest trees there is. So go to the things that are from here. You know, get your black walnut trees up and things that'll last for a lifetime. And that's forget about the Ontario maple. It grows, and it's also a very, very weak one. So all that education has to be done. That's just some seeds from me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Thank you, now, Audrey, for your comments. And I think, you know, even around your comments around the trucking, you know, you're right. There's a lot of big trucks on our territory that they contribute everything but financial resources. You know, so I think that's something that we should definitely get creative as well. Because, and the other important thing is the importance of own source revenue. You know, we always have to look. I mean, we see the work that the Development Corporation is doing, and you know, that all in return is going to things like roads, like building of schools or facilities or whatever we need. Well, you know, that's kind of where we've been discussing as this council is, you know, the importance of own source revenue, because we're obviously not getting enough from the government to do all this work. And so, you know, trying to I guess release that dependency off of government has always been the goal, in recognizing again our own true sovereignty. Back over to you, Hazel.
I just want to make a comment with regard to where all of the businesses develop themselves, and like Helen said, it's on their own properties. But I do recall when I had a business park was specifically a spot where people could have expected to develop businesses. So I think with the justice system, once it becomes full force, there can be regulations established whereby no more, say, smoke factories can happen in a forest line or whatever. And with regard to this plebiscite, it's a referendum, right, Bill, that'll attach to the next election. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. And that way the council, and you know, maybe it'll be shot down. I don't think it will be, but at least you'll know where you stand. And you'll be good standing as you move forward or not move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, now thank you, Hazel, for your comments. I'm gonna look to closing comments over to Helen. So Greg, you have next, and then we'll finish off with Helen and look to wrap this topic up.
Yeah.
And I'd like to be heard too, please.
Of course.
Well, that's
Sure.
sort of where I was going, just to reiterate what people were saying, is that it being a referendum, it gives us a little bit of a timeline. But you know, these companies that are coming on are making large amounts of money. And to the chief's point about, you know, what's their responsibility? Do they follow off the territory? They would follow environmental laws. You know, they would follow certain bylaws and standards. And that's what we're going to be putting in place. There are these standards that may force them to follow the standards that we put forth. The other thing too is, and Phil, you're aware of the West Bank and Kamloops.
Yes,
We had discussions about that, about the non-natives being charged, businesses on their res being charged service fees. And their service fees would cover a lot of the, I guess, the environmental problems that arise. And they were actually quite strict on who they allow as a business on their reserves. But that was just my comments. So,
No, yeah, and I think, you know, you're exactly right as well. Like, I mean, to, you know, comment to all companies coming on the territory that we are not a lawless community, and that we should be given the same respect as if they're doing business off the territory. That's the challenge that I've always had, or frustration that I have always had, because you even see, you know, some of these trucks, the way that they drive, you know, it's at really high speeds and all things like that. There's many safety issues around that. So I think it's sending that strong message that, you know, we do have standards here, and that respect definitely should be given. Over to you, Helen, and then finishing off with Melba. Sorry.
I would like to see us have a huge community meeting on development. Because I would like to see what people have to say. I don't know if we would want to do that, but I would like to see that. I think we need to start talking to the people, because we haven't done that in about, God, I don't know how long, 6 years? More than that, I think. Just on the subject of development. To say to people, what can we do about development on our reserve? Because it's happening more and more and more and more all the time. To see what people think about how we could work with that, or what we could do with it, or what they think that should be done, or I don't know. I just would like to hear what the people think. I know a referendum does that too in a way, but you don't hear nothing. They just come and vote and you don't hear what they got to say. Because it's just going to keep increasing. The businesses, I mean, we got a new one going up on Chiefswood, and we just had one going up on Chiefswood, so they're going to increase. But I would like to see what people think about it. I don't know, that's just my suggestion.
Well, I think it's a worthy suggestion. I mean, I think even for ourselves as council, we're going to have our own projects of our own development happening, you know, with housing and everything else. And, you know, we got to make sure that we're following our own rules as well when doing, you know, each of these projects and the impacts that they may potentially have. Melba.
Yes, I do agree with a plebiscite being held at election time. I think that would tell the tale of how community wants a healthy, safe community in all areas that are necessary. I think the rules and regulations should be in place, and those who jeopardize the health and safety of our people will be subjected to whatever is necessary. We need this overall well-being of our community. I think the values and needs have changed, unfortunate in some areas, because it's very harmful. I think we're at a point of dollars versus safety and well-being. So I said, hopefully this plebiscite will have people realize the harms that are happening in our community when we're only thinking of ourselves. We all know in certain areas it's the me generation. It don't matter what's happening next door or up the other end or down below. So hopefully we can put our minds together and come up with something that'll be useful to all our community and keep us safe when it comes to the environment. Thank you.
Totally agree. Okay, now thank you, Melba, for your comments as well. So again, really important conversation. There's never enough time for each of these topics, but I think, you know, to start to prioritize and what this recommendation or resolution lays out, you know, is exactly, I think, the direction that we need to go. And to Helen's point, I think it's important that we always hear from community. So maybe taking those steps to look at dates of a potential community meeting on this topic, because I know, you know, it'd be nice to even hear from the business community as well, and to see, you know, what can be done from their perspective as well. So all really good comments and good discussion. And I want to say, Nyawa, thank you to Phil for bringing this forward. Again, really important work, and it's been moved and seconded already. So I'm going to look to the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Motion to waive second reading. Sorry, moved by Nathan, second by Greg, to waive second reading on the previous motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, Phil, so it looks like we'll also have some follow-up for yourself on the status and the steps to the action on this resolution and what that looks like, but in addition to your original concern regarding the concrete company, which I can do some follow-up with you as well.
Just if I could ask a comment. So just so it doesn't sit on a corner and die.
Sure.
Is this, okay, this should be under what? I imagine the mandate of your CEO to make sure, because there's a lot of departments came on board like that. They
Yeah.
all need help. They all need help in the job they're doing.
Yes. Yes. So what I'm thinking or envisioning is to touch base with Darren at our next check-in to start to look on how this can be built out further. So it doesn't, like you say, get on that back burner and
Yeah.
stay there. We don't want that to happen. So we'll continue to put that as an action item and a standing
Okay.
item potentially, and what next steps look like.
Okay, thank you. Thank
Okay.
you, Council.
All right, thanks, Phil. Okay, Council, we're going to continue moving along here with our agenda. Unfortunately, we had our delegation reschedule, our third delegation. So that item from our mental health and addictions team will be deferred over to our next council meeting. So that will lead us then, that'll complete our delegation portion for the political liaison agenda for today, moving into the adoption of the minutes of April 24th. Is that right?
Yeah, I know.
I know. Moved by Sherry Lynn, second by Greg. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, our next item, which our Director of Social Services should be on the line. I see Arliss name. This is recommendation 6.1. So I'll look to you, Arliss, to provide us with the high-level overview and anything further that she'd like to add, and then we'll go into further questions, comments, and then decision. So good afternoon, Arliss. There she is.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just gotta try and turn my phone down here. Thank you for taking the time to, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, can you hear my background noise or is it okay?
No, you're good, Arliss.
Okay, thank you. So every 5 years, this is in regards to the Child and Family Services Act review. Every 5 years, in accordance with legislation, the ministry takes, does a review of the Child and Family Services Act. And just as a reminder, that Child and Family Services Act and under legislation that, in accordance with any legislative changes are to be brought forth to the First Nations community. So this is a 5-year review. And again, according to the regulations, they have so much time to post and provide feedback and create the discussion questions for the regulatory amendments that may or may not happen. So we have the Child Wellbeing Task Force that will be working with Justice and Social Services to develop a response with feedback that will be gathered from community services providers and community members, including the First Nations representatives and the workers at Ogwenidao. Basically what we're asking for is that therefore be it resolved that we approve the Social and Justice Department's work collaboratively to prepare written comments by July 31st that can be reviewed and approved by SNGREC for submission to the Ministry of Community, Children and Social Services. Their deadline is August 15th, 2023 for written submissions from Six Nations. And this will determine then the next steps. As you're familiar with, Chief, that sometimes the legislative changes that need to go forward to the standing committee, and if there's changes, and then sometimes First Nations are able to provide a presentation to the standing committee if it gets that far. So this is just the initial part of the review that's going on.
Okay, now I thank you, Arliss, for providing us with the overview to this recommendation. I'm going to open the floor up for any questions, comments.
I have a question, Melba.
Sure, go for it, Melba.
Yeah, you mentioned Ogwenidao. Are they working collaboratively with you in putting some of the changes in place, suggested changes?
We're reaching out with them. We have ongoing meetings with them, so that's part of the plan to engage the agency with the legislative changes and the new provisions that are coming into force July the 1st.
So you've actually started the discussions.
We have
with the
not. We're waiting.
changes that may be
we're-
necessary.
We're waiting for after today's meeting.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, just Arliss though, if this on Melba's point, if that's the case, there's no problem mentioning justice. So should we be including Ogwenidao in this as well as collaboratively? Because you're saying one thing, but it's reading differently.
Yeah, if they would be part of the service providers that we would engage with for feedback.
Okay, so I'm wondering if maybe we could amend that to include OGD. The whole goal is to continue working collaboratively at the end of the day across the board. Further questions, comments, Audrey?
No, I agree with that OGD should be named in here, not as just a service provider, but up in the front with justice and social services. We have to get working together, not in these silos, but we have to be working for the community, and that's why we're all here. And I will, if it's OGD's put up there, then I will move this motion.
Okay, so with that addition of including Ogwenidao, Audrey is moving. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it, Melba.
Second by Melba. Further questions or comments to the motion? Okay, seeing or hearing none, I'm going to go to the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. So Arliss, then that will come back again just before, so that, I see the deadline's August 15th. So we'll see that come back prior to then, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Is there anything further on your end, Arliss?
No.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Arliss, for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Have a great day. And I know there's other business, Arliss, to talk on, but I want to reach off the line on the other item.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Arliss.
Bye.
Okay, council, our next item again is our monthly Parks and Recreation report. So I'm not sure if there's any questions that may have come out of your reading of that report. And if not, looking to mover and seconder to accept it as information. Sure. Sherilyn?
I just have a question regarding the small diamond over at the arena. Are they using that, or I don't see anybody.
Sorry, I just want to, maybe if I can get Darren. To my knowledge, no, not at this point. I think there were still issues that was happening. Darren, can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think you're correct, Chief. I think there was some conversation with Cheryl. I can follow up immediately on that.
Yeah, we could get you that follow-up, but to my knowledge, from my last check-in, there was no use of it because there were still issues happening.
So I guess what are the issues, and is it still like a small diamond? Can it be made into a bigger diamond? As I guess, let's make it useful,
Sure.
usable, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess I don't want to, I will get you the specifics. So Darren, if you can include the full council on that, that'd be great.
Stop making a note now, Cheryl.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments in relation to the Parks and Recreation report? Okay, it's moved by Sherry Lynn, looking for a seconder. Seconded by Helen. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, we're going to continue moving along our agenda here. The next one is under scheduling, which is it's a post approval for Councillor Melville Thomas, who attended the Police Commission training from June 14th through till the 17th in Sault Ste. Marie. All expenses for this training were covered by the Police Commission. Moved by Sherry Lynn, seconded by Hazel. Any questions, comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. The next one is councillor reports, which I'll add in as well, both Nathan and Helen's items, as they're both under reports as well. So the first one is over to Councillor Greg, who has 3 reports that he'll walk through, and then we will go over to Helen and then Nathan for their reports. So over to you, Greg.
Just 3 reports that I'll give the community an overview. The first one was I was able to attend the OFNLP meeting and the AGM in Toronto as the proxy for Chief Markhill. Now, at that meeting, there were 95 of the 129 Ontario First Nation chiefs were present. And just as a quick overview of the finances and the financial numbers, that as for the year ending 2022, if you the gross casino revenues in Ontario were approximately $9.56 trillion. And of that 1.7% that we receive as First Nations is 162 million, approximately 162 million. So the monthly release of, and they release the money monthly. It's for the 129 First Nations, it was about $13.5 million. This year we had the non-gaming revenue added, there was some dispute by OLG as to releasing non-gaming revenue and that went to court and arbitration, and OFNLP won that. And that will be released, I think, this year, and then the average around 14, could be up to $17 million, which will be added. There was a couple concerns about the problems with reporting. Greater than 50% of First Nations were having some trouble reporting on time. The OLG would hold back their money if the report wasn't on time until they found and the reporting completed, and then they released the money. But that was one of the concerns. Another concern is iGaming. As you know, iGaming is doing very well in Ontario. The amount of iGaming, I think, profit for OLG was in the neighborhood of $1.4 billion. And I know that OFNLP is negotiating, again, 1.7% of gross revenues. That's before expenses. I know OLG wants to, they're thinking more along the lines of net revenues. Well, they've always negotiated net revenues. So there's some discussion that has to go on and negotiation that has to go on for that. They've also, OFNLP also brought forth other gaming revenues that they're going to be negotiating 1.7% for. And that's in terms of new lottery schemes. They're going to be looking at sports betting as well as comps that are given out for by casinos, by private casinos, as well as racetracks. So overall, there hasn't been much change and much movement yet on the 1.7 on iGaming. So that sums that up for the OFNLP AGM in Toronto. The second report I have is the Sovereign Wealth Limited Partnership. Now, this is monies that came from RAMA, and these were invested by the partnership group, the OFN, Ontario First Nation Asset Management General Partner, and that is part of the OFNLP. So again, the 129 First Nation partners in 2017, using RAMA dollars, invested $260 million in Hydro One, and they bought approximately 14 million shares, again at approximately $18 per share. And now this investment has generated approximately $30 million, or about 8.6%, which has done well in the last 3 years. Now, distributions won't be released right away. They'll be released to the First Nation partners when the profits reach 90 million, which is estimated in about 8 years. So it's a bit of a long-term investment. They did talk about another investment scheme where they were going to use capital, and they looked at buying into, as a partner, into the Ottawa Senators. They did their due diligence and they declined due to a sort of an unfair management agreement. And also they were concerned about the debt load that the Senators had. There was another partner, another First Nations member had brought up the fact that there was a new partner involved in buying the Senators, and that turned out to be that Michael Andlauer from Hamilton, and and it's going to be close to $1 billion investment that he won the bid. So I don't know where the OFNLP is on that investment as yet, or that bid as yet. The last report I had was the National Aboriginal Hockey Championship in Niagara Falls. I've been waiting for the exact reasons why we were eliminated from the bid. It was mainly due, I think, to such a very short notice. This is my feeling, is that, because I'm still waiting for the proper answer that they haven't given us yet. But I think it was due to just such a short span of only a month to get this bid together. I know the chief's office got a letter with only about 2 weeks to go before they made a decision. So, but we're going to continue on for next year. And I think they're going to be a little bit better prepared and will be ready to give a more comprehensive bid. And of course, the bid that was won in Grand Prairie, Alberta, the feeling is that it was more culturally oriented. So, but that gives us more time to build up the cultural aspect of the next bid for Niagara Falls. And that's about it, Chief.
Okay, thank you, Nyawa, for that report on the Limited Partnership and Sovereign Wealth Fund. Is there any, I'm going to open the floor up for any questions, comments for Greg and his report. Over to you, Helen. Oh, sorry if I would comment in the chat. Just want to acknowledge the chat from Nathan. His comment reads, we didn't use RAMA dollars for the Hydro One shares. Ontario gave us a no interest loan, which would be paid back by the dividends. Yeah, so just a clarification point on that. And now for that, Nathan. Further questions or comments on the report? And again, I think this is, gives us, the opportunity to say, what is our next steps and where do we further go at Six Nations? I know those discussions are ongoing.
Ron Jennison still sit there as Ontario's rep.
Yeah, Ron's still on there. Yeah, he's still on the board, but he wasn't present at the meeting.
Okay, again, thank you, Nyawa, Greg, for attending and as my proxy as well. So really, really appreciate that. I'm going to pass it back over to you, Greg, on your final update. I think it believes the National Aboriginal Hockey. Oh, that one's deferred. Oh yeah, you already did. Sorry, my apologies. I'm slow. Sorry about that, Greg. What I'll do, Council, is look to a motion after all the reports. So I'm going to next go to Nathan on his AFN Health legislation report.
So I attended this a few weeks ago, and in total, there looked to be, this was a AFN Health forum to discuss the legislation, and it happened in Toronto. About 150 to 175 participants attended, with representation from First Nations across what is now known as Canada, as well as health professionals and counselors. A few elders showed up as well. Six Nations did participate. Councillor Greg Fraser was there for the first day, as well as our acting Director of Health. But I did, and we're sure to make that acknowledgement that Six Nations was participating as observers only, both in the registration as well as the open forum. So participants, government, AFN knew that we were there as observers. The agenda really was about getting the most up-to-date information on the process for developing First Nations health legislation. Agenda topics included things like Joyce's principle, inherent and treaty rights, UNDRIP, international covenants on economic, social, and cultural rights, as well as a forum for feedback on the second day. And I want to talk a bit about that feedback forum because I did witness some unsavory kind of conduct from the AFN on that particular piece. So just a couple of points on clarification. The federal government has indicated that they have not started doing any kind of context for the legislation as of yet. According to the representatives, the federal government is still doing engagement and looking more so at what the principles would be for the legislation. But one of the interesting points I wanted to highlight for council is the fact that in the What We Heard report, very heavy on Métis content. Barely any First Nation content within the first engagement phase. So I found that very interesting and why I probably made the comment too on the statement of the Métis today, as well as the M&O legislation, right? Because I think what is dangerously happening here is the government, in particular the Liberal government, is looking to, meld all of our rights together into one big melting pot, which would be detrimental to First Nations at the least. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that piece is, very heavy on Métis content right now in terms of that particular engagement. Also, I wanted to kind of highlight a few other pieces. First Nation communities really haven't been engaged at all. It's more the First Nation side has been engaged on the organizational standpoint. And I know we had to correct the federal government to say we weren't engaged. A number of other organizations, including the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, had to make similar public statements to saying, hey, wait a minute, you didn't engage, our rights holders. So take our name off that list. First Nations really haven't been given the opportunity to do their own assessments. And this is getting into some of the feedback we heard at the forum. Many communities talked about not being able to do their own assessments to determine their own type of system that will work for us. Many comments around treaty implementation should be prioritized over health legislation. A lot of comments around the fact that the feds have no idea how to incorporate Indigenous health standards or Indigenous health professionals in this approach. And they had Dr. LaFontaine there to really hammer that point home, and a First Nations physician in his own right. And a lot about the particular process. So the Assembly of First Nations do not fully support a health legislative approach at this time. They don't have the mandate to do that. They have the mandate to continue to examine health legislation. However, what is troubling to hear is that this December, they are looking for a resolution to fully support this health legislative approach. And that's inclusive of co-development. So something we should kind of look for as we prepare for the December Assembly is ensuring that the next council has the information and can make those public statements. On the second day, there was a major feedback session, and the facilitator, you could tell the AFN was only there to hear positive comments towards legislation. They weren't there to hear, the negative comments towards it. So there was a point where, a former national chief got up and talked about the Constitution and the right to health, as well as that treaty approach. And then an elder tried to get up and speak, and the facilitator cut him off, and it was actually quite rude. And so that persisted with a few chiefs stepping in and the facilitator not conducting himself properly. And the meeting broke down at that point on the second day. Many First Nations representatives walked out, and including Six Nations, just to kind of show solidarity to the elders that were in the room, as well as the leadership, that, our voice does matter, and facilitators at the AFN ought not to be, conducting themselves in that particular manner. So the second day kind of broke down without any real results or having an understanding of where to go, other than the fact that we know AFN will be looking for a full support to this legislative approach this December. So something to be cautious of. So the recommendation here is to develop a position opposing the National Indigenous Health legislation and draft a letter to the minister responsible, as well as the AFN Chiefs Committee on Health, communicating our position. In addition, kind of working with our Director of Health, the Acting Director of Health, to conduct our own assessments to determine our own needs in health, to ensure that going forward we control health services and the delivery into the future, not a federal piece of legislation. So I don't know, Greg, if you have any other comments on the report, but yeah, that's kind of the crux of what happened there.
Okay, thank you, Nathan, for providing us with your report. I'm going to first go to Greg to offer his input and any comments and feedback, and then I'll open the floor for comments and questions, first beginning with Helen. Over to you, Greg.
Thank you, Nathan. That was very comprehensive, that report. Yeah, hit the nail on the head. I wasn't there the second day. I think when you left, Nathan, I did get up and speak as an observer. I I don't know if I set the tone for the next day or not, but I did try to express the fact that, you know, this whole legislative procedure was going on without our input. I didn't find that acceptable, that they would not even approach us or even consider it. The other thing is I went on to say that this legislation, and I tried to look at the numbers, and I thought that it was woefully inadequate in terms of funding, and that it was just another one of their tactics in terms of not actually looking at the real problem. So, yeah. So anyway, yeah. Thank you for that report, Nathan. Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. And like I said, yeah, sending this letter I think would be very important.
Okay, thank you now, and Greg, for your providing us with your input on this meeting. I'm going to go now to the floor for any further questions or comments. Over to you, Helen.
Yeah, it confuses me because when we went to the Chiefs of Ontario, they're rejecting that legislation. So where do we stay, with the Chiefs of Ontario or the AFN, or like it's unclear what we're doing, what anybody's doing?
Yeah.
That was my understanding, that they're rejecting this legislation. I think it says that in their, I think it's, my thing went off. They're rejecting the legislation. I think it says that in their resolution. So, and they're really, really against co-development because they said it's not working, because they don't co-development. They just do what they want and then they call it co-development. And according to Ontario, they do believe that that legislation is probably already written. And these meetings and everything is just going through the process. So I don't know what kind of position we are in. Are we going to listen? There seems to be two different things. AFN doing this and Ontario is doing this. So I don't know how they're jiving or what's going on together. Maybe Martin knows more about it than I do, because that's the first time they talked about it at Chiefs of Ontario that I've attended. So I don't know what's happening.
Well, I know Nathan has his hand raised as well, but I think that's, you know, the importance of going there as observer status so that we can, first of all, speak freely to what our actual needs are at Six Nations. That's number one. But I think to your point, Helen, it's, you know, when we were just talking with some of the, you know, health, it's, we see it happening across the board, but I think that's where we got to reconvene our own teams internally to then further that position, because there's now two different really avenues. But I think what we need to do is first internalize this and then further that out to see which one is in the best interest of our community. Nathan, did you have anything further to add?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's important for us, and that's why I made it kind of the recommendation, kind of the way it was, that we oppose, at this point, we oppose that national legislation from a Six Nations perspective.
Great.
And do so through a letter to both AFN and the minister responsible. So the minister responsible is Patty Hyduke.
Yep.
And I think it's Hare that's, it seems like Hare and Cindy are doing most of the work, at least from what I've seen at the AFN. They're at every one of these kind of forums, speaking on behalf of the national chief. And by opposing it, we're kind of coming along with what the Chiefs of Ontario are doing. But then we, like you say, Chief, we have to go beyond. Because Chiefs of Ontario can only go so far as to, you know, reject the co-development and the legislation. They don't have a mandate to do much else. So I think it's important for us to kind of do the work internally, come up with the position that we oppose, and then do the work internally to come up with that system of what it looks like for us.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I envisioned laying this out. So just on this report, then we obviously do have an action item. So maybe can look to At this point, if there's no further questions or comments, look to the recommendation within Nathan's report as looking to a mover and seconder to have our official opposition to the national legislation. Is there a mover to that effect? Moved by Sherilyn, seconded by Helen. Because you're right, Nathan, I think that's step one. And then once we actually, and we'll include that as to the letter to be written within that motion. Sorry, I just don't have it in front of me. It probably already reads that, Nathan. But at the end of the day, it's, I think, agreed. Step one, then getting into then now internalizing within our own staff and further that to the next step. So looking to any further questions or comments to that motion. Sure. Okay. Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. I'm going to actually ask for second reading to be waived on that motion as our mover, moved by Sherilyn, seconded by Helen to waive second reading on the previous motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Over to you, Sherilyn, just for a generic comment.
I just have a comment, and glad Nathan and Greg, you chief bringing this up, because I think the community really needs that. This is what's going on nationally, because then you have housing transformation, you have education transformation, but financing, want to call it transformation, even land management. There's just so much going on at the higher levels that is going to affect all of us. So I just wanted to share that, because it's bigger than just what we said now. It's all these other pieces that are coming down also with this transformation stuff coming to First Nations.
Health teams.
The health teams, everything. And I think that's the whole part that for the community to understand that it's not just, health or whatever, it's all different areas that they want transformation. And that's a big message.
It is.
Coming down.
Well, and just to that note, I had mentioned this at the Chiefs of Ontario Assembly, as much as communities have, they've voiced that they wanted to take, they're wanting to get in that direction of taking over and assuming more control of their own affairs, which obviously is the goal. But that's, I think, it's interpreted differently when it's from the perspective of the government. And I think that's the key difference where we have to be cautious, because if you say and want so much, it's almost a saying of, giving them an inch, take a mile type of thing. That's what they're doing. Yeah, exactly. Right. Sorry, Helen, and then over to Nathan.
To add to what Mark said, like, again, when I was at the Chiefs of Ontario, I recognize a lot of those chiefs don't know what this transformation stuff is about. It's like Sherilyn said, they think it's they're taking control of everything, but they're not realizing what it really means, this transformation stuff. And that's kind of scary when you think about it.
And I'm glad, Sherilyn, that you mentioned that, because it's not just what we deliver in community. It's like you say, it's across the board. It's happening provincially, nationally, that is impacting all of our members. Yeah. All First Nations, that's right. We got a statement to go there, but yes. Nathan, over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted one final comment on that transformation. I'm glad Helen and Sherilyn brought it up, because there's a third element to it. And it's probably the one that concerns me the most, is what I call the brown washing of our rights. So when you look at it from a standpoint of the transformation that's happening in every sector, now think of it in terms of, let's include the Métis in there as well. In health, that's going to be a big one, is that health transformation will now include the Métis nations all across, right? Whether or not they're legitimate or not. Education, same thing. Child welfare, same thing. Even when you look at the M&O kind of piece of legislation that supposedly is tabled today, but is going to be hitting next week, it'll likely include taxation in there. Which is, a right that we have that is now being, for lack of a better term, brown wash across the table.
Right.
To individuals, and I'm not in a point, and I'm actually trying to think of a way that we can actually get a little bit more aggressive on this. Is I can't stand for the fact that I'm going to start sharing my right with somebody who does not deserve that right.
Right.
That's the biggest thing for me right now, and I'm trying not to get pissed off over all of this stuff, but it's hard not to, right? Because it's a difficult situation to be in, and I think the government knew what they were doing when they started this transformation road, and we got to get pretty aggressive on this.
I totally agree. It's I think we had the comment made even at the Chief Assembly of watering down. They're basically trying to water it down. Yeah. Okay, so do appreciate that, Nathan, your report, as well as again the action item to that report. So that's been done, and we'll get that letter out as quickly as possible. In addition to, I'm going to be making a statement wrapping up the reports on the Métis. So we'll do that momentarily. Is there any further questions or comments for Nathan? Okay, seeing or hearing none, I'm going to shift over now then to Helen. I believe Helen had a quick update
Okay.
on political or
I
council
haven't
report.
compiled the report yet, but I'm working on it. But I just wanted to give a little idea of what we were going to. We were there for about 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Monday, I went to the Leadership Council on behalf of Mark, and then the rest of the day, there was all different kind of meetings that I attended. And then Tuesday and Wednesday was the Chiefs Assembly, and they went right to like 12 hours each day. But it was interesting. Anyway, there was two things that I found out, and I want to concentrate my report on it. There's a thing called Nietzsche. I can't remember, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't remember the name, the official name, but it's a new organization. It's called Nietzsche. And it was developed with the corporation of the federal government. There was no consultation with First Nations whatsoever. And they are delivering all the housing programs for the urban natives across Canada. They got all the money. They have all the million. And it's for urban housing. And nobody knew about it. There was no consultation whatsoever. So the lady in Toronto, that I think her name is what, you know that lady's name from Toronto?
You know,
She runs the housing program in Toronto. She's really concerned because they're not really clear on what this Nietzsche is going to do, but I think they're going to be controlling all the money. So she's really concerned. And I have a feeling it's probably going to impact Native housing as well. The thing is, it was put in place by the government to look after urban housing. So then right away, me thinking, are they going to try and do the same thing for Ontario when it comes to housing? And another thing that concerned me was they're heavily involved with including the Métis, and they have no criteria to support who's applying for the money. Whether it's like, they were concerned that it had to be band members, but they have no criteria to determine if they're band members, or it's almost like a self-identity. And they have Métis on the board. So that was a real big concern. So I'm gonna write about that. But it's a big concern. The other one was the Chiefs of Ontario setting up a prosperity and employment table. That's a big concern because they're going to be doing the same things as the Asenas, like Great and all of those ones that do those things. And they got $25 million to do it, which is concerning. I don't really that's the first I heard of it when Joel Abrams from the Grand Chief of AIA is the one that's running that table. And I was sitting there, my mouth kind of hung open when he said that, $25 million, and I thought, and that's from Ontario. So I don't know whether Premier Ford's up to something because he's the one that encouraged that table. Whether he's up to something when it comes to employment and training, I don't know. But I thought to myself, well, all of these incentives could have sure used that money. It would have been, you know, if he had that kind of money to give out. So I want to find out more about that. What's going on with that table? And the rest of it was just all who stuff. But I'm going to be writing a letter to Rachel Jean Hare because I was mad because when they went in camera, they made the counselors leave. And I thought that kind of really made me mad because we take the time out of our lives to go to these meetings. We sit there all day and we travel to there. We go to all of these meetings and they tell counselors you can't stay at an in-camera meeting. But they let their technicians stay, they let their elders stay, they let everybody else stay, but they made the counselors and other people leave. So I'm going to raise a concern about that because I think we should have been allowed to stay in there. Other than that, it was just regular council business, chief's business. So I'm just going to do a brief report. I'm trying to pick out the things that you might want to read. I'm not going to write everything. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Helen, for providing us with your report. And I'll just again, this will be forthcoming as well from the chief's office, just in terms of Helen's point of the written report and really pulling out the political pieces to the Chiefs of Ontario Assembly itself. But I thought, and we did touch a little bit on the national chief business, which I won't get into as it was still deemed in camera at the Chiefs of Ontario level. But again, we'll I'm sure we'll be seeing more things transpire in the next few weeks with that matter. So that did take up some time and some good conversation amongst the chiefs on our position within Ontario. And again, do want to say thank you, Anyala, to Helen as she was proxy day one. As you all know, we were in Ottawa for the 2 days of the Indian Day School. The action that we had put forward to the courts, again, and a final step as we were trying our best to communicate and have conversation with government. But unfortunately, nothing was going anywhere, so we had no choice but to file a motion in the courts to extend the deadline for the day school. As we know, we still have many members within this community who have not been able to fill out an application and to meet that deadline. And in addition to the other motion that is within the courts and still waiting to hear back a judgment, which is the amending of the levels. So for example, if you applied for a level 1 and received it, but yet then thought back as look back and then decided that you were eligible for a higher level, that is another motion that is being heard within the courts to do with day school. So we do have two motions to follow. Our lawyers are advising that we will not hear back minimally at least 60 days to the judgment of what that outcome is to our motion. So again, want to say thank you to everybody who attended. It's always impactful on the judge's decision when they see us in court of our own motion. And I know, again, want to thank community member Audrey Hill for also filing in conjunction with us as the elected council on behalf of all of our class members affected by the Indian Day School era. So that is again more business that we will update once we receive further answers. But just going back again really quickly to the assembly as well. Again, I had flew in after Ottawa that day, so that would have been Tuesday night there for Wednesday, Thursday, and that was, I thought there was again good discussion in terms of the environment update as well with Kathleen Padulo. She had a lot of good information, and again, we are just for communities update. Still, there was one, we did hear back from the administrator on a few items, further follow-up that they wanted or requested for the status of being added to the impacted First Nations list on the water legislation. So that is still ongoing to the community for your information on that piece. The other one is, and I think it was still important as well, is the data governance strategy, I think, was a biggie that we were discussing. This was brought up from Grand Chief Abram Benedict. I know we've been doing our own work here in community. In fact, we see that on the ground happening right now with our ethics committee in the control of and ownership of data and what that looks like. And so that was something that was interesting as well. Helen touched a little bit on, again, some of the other pieces of housing and the prosperity table. As you recall, the prosperity table was first introduced, in fact, by the government of Ontario. That's kind of where it got the mandate. It was at the cusp, rather at the end of the term during Roseanne's term as regional chief. And Hare just continued on with that mandate, given that that was already work done prior to. So still a lot of things happening within that prosperity table. One of the main issues that we got out of it is the First Nations banking issue. I know we've been having some discussion around our own financial institution and some of the challenges that our businesses are challenged with dealing with the banks. And so that was something that was also a good discussion amongst the chiefs and what that looked like. We made it very clear that the Chiefs of Ontario, were not the title holders, so it's very hard for them to be involved within that specific, and then it goes back to within obviously the communities, and so that was part of our position at that topic. The other one I just wanted to touch on as well is the Métis issue, and I may as well do this right now. So I'm going to read just for community's background. There's been many, and you've probably heard council speaking of this issue for some time now, to do with the Métis Nation of Ontario, and really just Métis, the Métis issue in general as well, so nationally. So today, and again, want to express our support to all of those chiefs and leaders who traveled to Ottawa. Yesterday, unfortunately, it was just too late notice for us at Six Nations to get to Ottawa, as we had obviously full packed meetings today. And so many of the chiefs traveled in yesterday, had meetings, and again, this was a direct call to action and demonstration at Parliament. And so I just want to touch a little bit on the issue itself. So earlier this year, the government of Canada and the Métis National, or the MNO rather, entered into a carefully crafted agreement, which the agreement recognizes large areas of territories as the historic Métis Nation homeland, ranging from the provinces of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, as well as parts of Ontario, British Columbia, and northern the United States. The legislation will affirm that all Métis communities represented by the MNO have the right to self-determination, including the right of self-government under Section 35. The legislation will also recognize MNO as a Métis government and as well as an Indigenous governing body. So that's the backgrounder to the issue and the legislation, and why and our demonstration and the leadership of Ontario, including ourselves at Six Nations, was making this stand today in Ottawa. So some of, again, our clear messages that we want to get out as collaborators and as supportive of this across Ontario is that First Nations are not against Métis people, and in fact, we reject all claims of lateral violence. We do not want to get into the business of any type of lateral violence, because that's not the case here. What we do want to continue to key message is that us as First Nations respect legitimate rights holders, and that we have been very clear with the government that our central issue is not that we reject all Métis or Métis rights. The issue is that the communities represented by the MNO did not exist historically and can't be Section 35 rights holders. Granting rights to illegitimate groups in our territories undermines all of our collective rights. So First Nations in Ontario have repeatedly been denied any opportunity to discuss this issue with Canada. And again, this went to the earlier comments of consultation and the lack of. First Nations have serious concerns about this legislation and its overall impacts to our rights. We know, again, we've met with Minister Miller during the Chiefs of Ontario, and well, he joined in virtually, and we got to maintain, we all stood together and collectively to state this message. Again, Chief Scott McLeod led that discussion to Minister Miller, which to me are basically trying to silence the legitimate concerns of First Nations about the proposed legislation by taking the unprecedented and undemocratic step of trying to force it through the House and as well the Senate without any debate. First Nations have the right to be heard, and subsequent sessions should always come next, and as well should never be silenced. So again, part of our statement at Six Nations, our direct call on the government of Canada, this is in partnership in support of all of our other nations within Ontario, First Nations in Ontario. We call on the government of Canada to pause their current efforts to pass this legislation, as well as calling on the government of Canada to commit to a transparent and thorough review of the factual and legal concerns raised by all First Nations regarding the basis for the Métis Nation of Ontario's claims to hold Section 35 rights. So we at Six Nations join in with all of our leadership across Ontario in stating that message loud and clear to the government of Canada, and again, offer all our support to those in Ottawa today who have demonstrated this morning, and as well as made those same statements to those in the House sitting. So we are going to continue to maintain and get a status update as to where things are at, as we were given some signal that it was going to be this week voted on. And so hopefully with our efforts that we're doing, it's also encouraged to, and this is something that we discussed at the assembly, is to contact all of our local MPs. And you know, we're looking at exhausting everything that we can in every avenue that we can to make sure that our message is out there loud and clear in relation to the MNO and the Métis issue at large. So that was just again, I've kind of intertwined a report into a statement, but all in all really important work that's happening. So right from the Indian Day School to the Chiefs of Ontario, and as well, just really quickly wanted to touch on the Monday, again, I had attended the previous week, sorry, the meeting with Premier Ford. As you recall, I had to step out a little earlier at last finance, and that was from the Leadership Council. And I know Helen did play proxy at the last leadership meeting, but really wanted to just touch on a little bit of that meeting with Ford. And the advocacy, really it was an advocacy strategy session, looking to have that at least 3 times a year. So this is technically looked at as the second one. It was an opportunity to meet, hear from Michael Parsa, who was the current Minister of Children and Community and Social Services. You know, the big conversation around there was the review of the 1965 Welfare Agreement. And looking at modernizing as many services again that the ministry funds, looking at standardization. I know that was big on Ford's opening comments, wants to see all First Nations succeed in the business of economic development, which is probably why you would have seen to Helen's earlier comments, $25 million to the prosperity table, which we all know is from the province of Ontario. We also had the opportunity to hear from Paul Calandra, the Ministry of Long-Term Care, had the floor for a couple minutes to talk about, again, the First Nations access to long-term care beds. Had a little bit of opportunity to speak on the Yirrkala Lodge in the current state and what our plans are there, and how also as well as supportive of the Haudenosaunee Health Services and the diagnostic center that the Colleen and Michelle and others are working on. That was also leading into Sylvia Jones, who's the Minister of Health, also had that same opportunity to discuss that same initiative, the diagnostic And as well as we talked to earlier, the legislation, the transformation, the arterial health teams and some of those pieces, obviously still many challenges faced, even not just here at Six Nations, but other First Nations territories. And again, we really focused around innovative and creative ideas and how we need to eliminate as much red tape and to streamline the processes as much as we can to get turnaround quicker and on the ground. And so that was some of the ministers that were at the table as well. Just lastly was the parliamentary assistant Patrice Barnes of education, and got to touch a little bit on education as well. So those, I know that was a long wind of reports and talking, but nonetheless, I think the important piece out of that, and there'll be follow-up written reports to everything that we've mentioned on the reports itself. But again, the big takeaway piece is the statement on the Métis issue and our support to all leadership who were able to attend in Ottawa this morning. So I know that's a lot to take in. I'll look to open the floor up for any questions or any comments on any of those items that I had mentioned or any councillors mentioned. We did receive already approval for Nathan's motion on his report, so I will look for a motion if there's no further questions or comments. Moved by Sherry Lynn and seconded. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to get a mover and seconder, then I'll open up the floor. It's moved by Sherry Lynn and seconded by Greg. Then further questions and comments over to you, Melba, and then Audrey.
Yeah, just mention NDP meeting, Mark.
Sorry, say that again, Melba.
The NDP meeting.
Oh, yes, sorry, that's right. We also had the opportunity in Ottawa to meet with the opposition and the critic of the new Democratic Party. She's actually from, sorry, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, is it Iqaluit? I think that's how I pronounce it, yes. And so we, one of our strategy around there again is she's going to be raising it within the House as well. Any opportunity that she can on the Indian Day School the Indian Day School support of the extension of the deadline. And so one of our goals is to hit up as many opposition as we can to gain further support on that. Thank you for that reminder, Melba. Oh, Melba, did you have anything further that you'd like to add to that meeting?
No,
Melba,
no, I didn't.
Melba
have
also
anything
attended
further.
as well as Norma.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, Melba, over to you, Audrey.
Just a quick question. Who is calling our MPPs and our MPs?
So we're doing that. We've already I believe our office has already began doing that in terms of letters, phone calls, but it was more or less of, in case you wanted to get involved as community members and so forth, that we were putting out, working with our communications department on the who, what, when, why type of thing.
No.
Yeah, same thing. We didn't get a meeting with him, but we also are in queue because we're meeting with Jake as well. Yeah. Okay, is there any further questions or comments? Again, it's all strategy. I know there's not much that we can further get into in terms of our further internal strategies, as it won't be much of a strategy if everyone knows it. Okay, seeing or hearing none, it's been moved and seconded to accept all reports that were listed, including myself, Greg, and Helen. Actually, I should get another seconder because you're included. If I can get another seconder, second by Hazel. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, that is all I have for this portion of our political liaison agenda of June the 19th. Thank you, and Yawa, to everybody for joining in. I hope you have a great rest of your Monday. We have a lot of follow-up items that we will let community know once we hear all answers. Oh, sorry, I see Arliss.
Yes, we have presentation from Sinead. She's waiting in the.
Yep, that's the next portion, Arliss. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing or hearing no further questions, I'll look to a motion to adjourn. Moved by Greg, seconder. Second by Sherry Lynn.
Melba.
Oh, sorry, Melba.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. So thank you, Nyawa, to everybody for joining in and watching our political liaison meeting. Have a great day.